Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It happened in the kind of office where even your own reflection feels like it doesn't belong. Glass walls, marble floors, and the constant hum of people too important to smile. And yet, there I was, standing across from Susan Merrill, Valerie's boss, feeling like I had fire in my lungs. "I know about your husband," I said, my voice shaking more from rage than nerves. "I know he's been meeting my wife outside of work. I've seen them." Susan didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She just crossed her arms, leaned back against her glass desk, and let out this slow, amused exhale. The kind that makes your blood run hot. "You barge into my office during a senior board call," she said coldly. "To accuse my husband of what? Having an affair with Valerie? Are you out of your mind?" My fists clenched at my sides. "I'm not here for a fight. I'm here for the truth. I know what I saw, her getting into his car, thinking no one was watching." Susan tilted her head. "So now you're stalking your wife?" "I'm defending my marriage," I shot back. "And you're defending a lie." Her eyes sharpened. "You have no evidence, no credibility. And if you think this little tantrum won't have consequences, think again." I stepped closer, just enough to lower my voice. "You think I'm scared of your consequences? I just want the truth. Do you know what they're doing behind your back?" That was when she laughed. Loud, cutting, theatrical. "Oh, Thomas. You poor, fragile man," she said, mocking. "Is this why Valerie married beneath her pay grade? You're unraveling because you can't keep up." Those words hit harder than a slap. "You're bluffing," I said, jaw tight. "You don't know what they've done." "I don't care what they've done," she snapped, her mask slipping. "But you coming here, screaming slander in my office? That I care about. Valerie's career is on the line now, and maybe yours too, if you're not careful." The door swung open behind me. 2 security guards entered, stone-faced, ready. Susan straightened her blazer, pointed at me with a flick of her hand. "Get him out. He doesn't work here. And if he ever sets foot in this building again, I'll file a restraining order." I barely resisted as the guards took me by the arms. "You'll find out soon enough," I said, voice low. "You think power makes you untouchable, but the truth doesn't care who you are." I caught one last look at her face, still smug, still smirking, as the doors closed behind me. They walked me out through the pristine lobby like I was some intruder, someone dirty who'd wandered in from the street. People stared, heads turned. I kept my chin up, even though my whole chest felt like it was going to explode. By the time I reached the sidewalk, the cold air punched me harder than the humiliation had. Valerie's world, my world, all of it was cracking. And nobody believed me. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I knew she'd be waiting before I even pulled into the driveway. The porch light was still on. Her car parked crooked, like she'd rushed in too fast to care. When I opened the door, Valerie was standing in the living room like a storm caught mid-brew, arms crossed, her blazer still on, and her work badge swinging slightly with each shallow breath. "You went to my office today," she said, her voice tight and cold. I shut the door behind me slowly. "Val, no," she cut in, stepping forward. "What did you say to Susan?" I tried to stay calm, keep my voice low, steady. "I asked if your schedule could be eased a little. Maybe shorter hours or fewer late nights. That's all." Her expression didn't soften. "You asked my boss for that, without even talking to me?" "I wasn't trying to go behind your back," I said. "You've been coming home completely drained. I thought if someone up the ladder could make room for a better balance. Thomas." She dropped her arms and took a breath, like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Do you have any idea how that made me look?" "I wasn't trying to make you look like anything," I said, inching toward her. "I just see how tired you are. You don't sleep. You barely eat. You bring work home every night." She stared at me, eyes flashing. "Because I'm building something. You don't just coast when you're in my position. You fight for your seat every single day." "I get that," I said, "but I see what it's doing to you. I just wanted to help." "By making me look weak?" she snapped. "Do you know how many people would kill for the spot I have? And now Susan's going to think I've got a husband who's worried I can't handle it." "That's not what I said," I muttered. "I asked for her to look out for you, not carry you." Valerie paced now, heels clicking sharply on the wood. "She told me you interrupted a meeting, that you walked in unannounced and started talking about my stress like I was one bad week away from falling apart." I shook my head. "That's not how it happened." She turned on me. "How did it happen then? Did you sit down and give her my whole personal routine?" Tell her I cry in the shower too, or just that I forget dinner half the time. I told her you're working yourself to the edge, I said, my voice hardening now. Because it's true. And I love you enough to not let you collapse, just to prove a point. You love me enough to humiliate me, she shot back. You thought I'd be grateful? I thought you'd understand, I said. No, Thomas. What you did wasn't about love. It was about control. I blinked. Control? Yes. Her voice cracked. You want me home earlier. You want me softer, slower, more available. And you used my boss to try and shape me into that. That's not. I started, but she was already pacing again. I've worked 10 years to get to this level. I've earned every meeting, every client, every late night. And then you walk into my office like I'm your project to fix? I dropped my hands to my sides, frustrated. You're twisting this into something ugly. No, she said, stopping dead in front of me. You crossed a line. And now Susan is questioning whether I'm too stretched. She pulled me from a pitch today, Thomas. You might have cost me more than you know. The words hit like a punch. I stepped back, unable to find anything worth saying in response. I didn't mean to ruin anything, I finally said. She scoffed. You just did it by accident, right? We stood there for a moment, me on one end of the room, her on the other. Same walls, same furniture, but it felt like a courtroom now. Every word, a piece of evidence. Every breath, a new offense. Then she said, quieter now, almost like she didn't want to believe it herself. You don't trust me to handle my own life. I took a long breath, the kind that makes your ribs hurt. I do trust you, I said. But maybe I stopped trusting whatever's going on behind your schedule. Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I shook my head. Nothing. She looked at me a long time after that. Not with anger. Not even disappointment. Just something colder. Like I was a stranger she hadn't realized had moved into her house. She turned away. I have a call in the morning. Early. Don't wait up. Then she walked upstairs and didn't look back. And I just stood there, alone, in a house full of quiet things neither of us wanted to say. I sat back at my desk the next morning, fluorescent lights humming overhead like a reminder that everything was still supposed to be normal. Cubicle walls, coffee stains on paperwork, endless emails. Outside, the Atlanta skyline glittered like a lie. My phone buzzed softly in my pocket. I pulled it out, pretending to check a calendar reminder. What I was really watching was that little gray dot. Valerie's car had just pulled into the company garage. Right on time. Just like every other day this week. I pinched the screen to zoom in. Third level, same corner. It never changed. I'd slipped the AirTag under her back seat 2 weeks ago. Felt sick about it the whole day after. I kept telling myself it was just precaution, not spying. That it wasn't about control. That I was just trying to understand the woman who now locked doors between our words. But so far, nothing. From home to office. Office to home. Maybe a stop at a grocery store once. Gas station. A coffee shop near her building. Every movement, smooth. Predictable. Clean. Too clean. It was the neatness of it that made my gut twist. Valerie wasn't a robot. She had client lunches, post-work drinks, conferences. At least she used to. But this was clockwork. Too safe. Like a path someone draws to cover their tracks. Everything good over there, came a voice from the other side of the partition. I startled slightly. It was Roger, the guy in IT who always wore sandals, even in winter. Yeah, I said, flashing a tight smile. Just a long week. He nodded like he knew the feeling and went back to slurping his oversized soda. I turned back to my screen. My browser had 3 tabs open, one on project timelines, one on Valerie's location tracker, and one on the homepage of a private detective agency downtown. Discreet. Affordable. Verified evidence in 48 hours. They had a slideshow of grainy photos, some guy caught with a woman behind a restaurant, another image of someone crying in a car. I clicked through half-heartedly, my cursor hovering over the request a consultation button, but I didn't press it. I leaned back in my chair, rubbed my jaw, and whispered to no one. What am I even looking for? Because so far, she wasn't doing anything wrong. Not on the surface. And maybe I was the one falling apart. Still, I didn't close the tab. Just left it open, quietly waiting, like me. The coffee pot in the break room hissed louder than usual. I stood there waiting for it to finish sputtering, staring at the chipped edge of a styrofoam cup like it held some kind of omen. Outside the window, Atlanta pulsed like it always did. Noisy, unforgiving, full of people walking fast like they knew exactly where they were going. I didn't. I decided to take a few days off, to think, to breathe, to follow the truth wherever it led, but I needed it approved first. So when I knocked on Mark's door, my manager, a man who wore Bluetooth earpieces like they were earrings, I'd already rehearsed my story. My dad's in the hospital. Minor surgery, nothing dramatic, but I want to be there. Mark didn't even look up from his screen. When? Tomorrow through next Wednesday. Silence. He tapped his pen a few times, clicked his mouse twice, then finally said, "No." I blinked. "No. We've got quarterly reviews coming in. You know that." He finally looked up. Bad timing. I stepped closer, keeping my voice steady. "Mark, I've worked here for 8 years. I've never asked for time off without notice. You know I don't abuse this." He leaned back, folding his arms like some kind of authority figure out of a bad courtroom drama. "That's the problem, Thomas. You think loyalty builds leverage. It doesn't. Not anymore." That hit harder than it should have. I nodded slowly, trying to process how disposable I'd just been made to feel. "Right," I said quietly. "So the guy who covered for Carla during her maternity leave, who fixed half the inventory reporting system last fall, who worked through the flu, he gets nothing." Mark raised an eyebrow. "You done?" The break room door creaked open behind me. I didn't even turn to look. "No," I said, my voice rising. "I'm not." I stepped forward, setting the coffee down hard on the counter. "Let me guess. If I were someone louder, more dramatic, maybe someone you play golf with on Sundays, I'd have 2 weeks and a fruit basket waiting." Mark stood too now, arms still crossed. "You're out of line." "No," I said, sharper now. "I'm just done pretending I'm lucky to be invisible." He scoffed. "Look, you want to pout? Do it on your lunch break." I pulled the envelope from my coat pocket, the one I wrote 2 nights ago but hadn't planned to use. I slapped it onto the counter next to the creamer. "You want lunch? Consider this your appetizer," I said. Mark's eyes flicked to the envelope. "That your resignation?" I nodded. "You serious?" I looked him square in the face. "You think loyalty doesn't mean anything? Fine. Then you don't get mine." I grabbed my mug, walked back to my desk in silence, and shut off my monitor for the last time. No dramatic farewell. No slamming drawers. Just a quiet end to a chapter that should have ended years ago. As I walked out of the building, past reception, past the elevator I always waited too long for, I felt something strange. Not relief. Not fear. Just taller. Straighter. Like my back finally remembered it had a spine. The air outside hit cold against my lungs. But I didn't shiver. I just walked. And with every step, the world started feeling a little more honest. I hadn't shaved in 2 days, and my coffee was cold, but I didn't move. I just sat there in my car, windows cracked, engine off, watching the sleek black SUV across the parking lot like it was a stage curtain ready to be pulled back. Valerie's car pulled in right on cue. 8:09 a.m. Perfect as always. She stepped out in heels and a fitted coat, her hair swept back in that efficient way that said she meant business. She didn't look around, didn't pause, just walked with purpose toward the building, then stopped. She turned suddenly, checking her phone, and pivoted, walking toward the far end of the lot, not the front entrance. My jaw tightened. And then, like watching a magician's final trick, the passenger door of a silver Lexus clicked open. Waiting for her. Susan's husband, David. I'd only seen him once before. Tall, mid-50s, all polished smugness and subtle ego. I watched through my windshield as Valerie slid into the seat next to him like she'd done it 100 times. I didn't move. Just slowly raised my phone, heart pounding. Click. The car eased out of the lot, and I gave it a 10-second lead before I started my engine. I followed from 2 lights back. They didn't rush, didn't dodge traffic like they were hiding. That was what struck me the most. They weren't afraid of being seen. It was the confidence that twisted in my gut like a knife. We passed downtown, then midtown, then a left turn into an older part of town, brick buildings, a diner with sun-bleached blinds, a shuttered laundromat. Then the hotel, small, low cost, tucked between a payday loan office and a nail salon. They pulled in, parked in the back lot. I followed around the corner and found a spot 3 rows over, hidden just enough. Then I waited. The car doors opened. I watched through my side mirror. Valerie stepped out first. Her coat was off. David followed, hand on her lower back. Close. Too close. Click. Another photo. They stood near the entrance. Laughing. Laughing. Then his hand brushed hers. And finally, the kiss. Not quick. Not awkward. Real. Click. They disappeared inside a side door marked private access. Guests only. I didn't move. I didn't scream. I just kept taking photos until the parking lot went still again. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the pictures on my laptop. Each one a bullet. A truth I couldn't unsee. Then my phone buzzed. Valerie. Hey babe, I'm grabbing ingredients on the way home. How does lemon chicken sound? Thought we could unwind tonight. Just us. My stomach twisted. I stared at her text like it was written in another language. Friendly. Warm. Like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't spent the morning with someone else's husband behind a hotel door. I took a breath and replied with only one sentence. Me. I'm on my way to Susan's office. Thought you'd want a heads up. It took less than 10 seconds. Valerie, wait, what? Valerie, what are you talking about? Valerie, Thomas. Please don't do this. Valerie, call me. Now. I didn't. She tried again. Valerie, whatever you think you saw, it's not what it looks like. Then the phone rang. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. Her voice exploded on the other end. Thomas, you don't understand. Don't you dare go to her. I've got photos, I said flatly. I can explain. No, you can't. Please, just come home, she said, and her voice was shaking now. Let's talk, just you and me. I was already pulling onto the highway. Too late, Valerie. Thomas, she snapped, tone flipping. You're going to blow up everything. You don't get to decide this. I'm not deciding anything, I said. You did that when you got into his car. Silence. Then her voice dropped, sharp and cold. Do you have any idea what you're doing? I didn't hesitate. Yeah, finally telling the truth. And I hung up. The city looked different at night, quieter, like it was holding its breath. I stood outside Merrill and Klein's glass tower for a long minute, laptop in hand, watching the dimmed floors and flickering lights. Only a few windows still glowed. Her office was one of them. I rode the elevator up without a word. The silence felt heavy, like it knew what I was about to do. Susan's assistant was gone for the day. I knocked once, then pushed the door open. She was at her desk, still in heels, blouse crisp, but her hair slightly undone, one pin missing. She looked up, annoyed at first. Then she saw who it was. You're not supposed to be here, she said sharply. I figured you'd say that, I replied, stepping inside and gently closing the door behind me. But I also figured you'd want to hear this in private. She leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. If this is about Valerie's position, it's not, I said calmly. It's about your husband. That froze her. A small twitch in her brow. I told you once to stay out of things you don't understand, she said. I sat down across from her, opened the laptop, and rotated the screen toward her. The photos were already pulled up. I didn't say anything. I just watched her face. First, confusion. Then stillness. Her eyes followed every frame. Valerie getting into the car. The coffee stop. The kiss. The hotel. She didn't blink. When the last photo came into view, David's hand on Valerie's lower back as they walked into that side entrance, she let out a breath like her ribs had cracked open. She didn't cry right away, but something behind her eyes shifted. I spoke softly. I didn't come here to hurt you. I just came to stop pretending. She looked at me, jaw locked, voice low. How long? I don't know for sure, I said, but long enough for them to stop hiding it. Susan leaned forward, elbows on the desk, rubbing her forehead like it might undo what she'd just seen. And you brought this to me because... I met her eyes. Because I don't work for anyone anymore. And I have nothing left to lose. Her expression cracked then, just a little. Why didn't you send this anonymously? She asked. Because you deserve the truth from someone who looked you in the eye. That was when her voice finally wavered. Do you know how many nights I spent defending him? I nodded slowly. I know the feeling. She turned her head, staring out the window at the skyline. Her shoulders trembled once. Then again. I don't need pity, she said quietly. I didn't bring any. A long silence settled between us. The kind you don't fill with words. Then she looked at the laptop again, hand resting gently on the trackpad, like it was something fragile. You could have gone to war with her, she said. But instead you gave me this. I shrugged. I figured you'd know what to do with it. She nodded once, then lowered her head into her hands. I didn't stay, just stood, closed the laptop, and set it gently back down on her desk. As I reached the door, she whispered without looking up, "Thank you for not yelling." I paused. Didn't see the point. The damage was already done. Real quick, hit the like button to boost the story. The office was quiet. Too quiet for the kind of moment we were both sitting in. Susan hadn't moved since I slid the laptop in front of her. Her elbows were still braced on the desk, her face buried in her hands, breathing shallow but steady. The glow from her desk lamp made the room look warmer than it really was, casting long shadows across glass walls and steel furniture. I sat back down slowly. "I'll transfer everything," I said softly. She didn't respond, just gave the slightest nod. Her shoulders hunched like the weight of her entire world was pressing down on her spine. I opened her laptop and got to work, dragging the photo files over, organizing the messages I'd saved, sorting by date, labeling folders. Everything clean, everything clear. No drama, no noise, just facts. And silence. Halfway through, I looked over. Susan hadn't moved, but her hands had dropped to her lap. Her face was pale, eyes rimmed in red, and for the first time since I met her, she looked lost. No authority, no perfectly measured tone, just a woman too tired to pretend she wasn't breaking. "You don't have to look at any of it tonight," I said. "It'll all be here." Still nothing. She blinked slowly, lips slightly parted, like she was still catching up to the moment. I kept working. The file transfer bar crawled across the screen like a funeral procession. Every ping of completion echoed in that quiet space like a verdict. And then, when the last folder finished copying, I leaned back and rubbed my face. It had only been 30 minutes. Felt like 3 hours. Susan let out a small breath beside me. Not a sob, just an exhale, like something heavy had finally tipped loose inside her. Her head rested back slightly, then slumped to the side. And before I even realized what was happening, her temple was against my shoulder. I froze. She didn't say anything, didn't apologize, just stayed there. Her breathing was soft, uneven. I looked down and saw a faint shimmer of tears drying on her cheek. One had soaked through the fabric of my sleeve. I didn't move, didn't flinch. After everything she'd just seen, after everything I'd just handed her, I figured the least I could offer was stillness. She'd lost more in 30 minutes than most people do in a year. Maybe more than she'd admit, even to herself. And she didn't need another sharp word or cold gesture. She needed air. She drifted off like that. Slow, gentle. Her breathing steadied. And for just a moment, her face relaxed, still sad, but no longer bracing for impact. Carefully, I shifted out from under her. She stirred faintly, but didn't wake. I slipped my coat off and gently placed it over her shoulders. Then, with both arms, I lifted her, light, but tense, like her whole body was still holding on to the shell of composure. I carried her to the couch near the windows, the same one I'd seen in meetings before, always looking too pristine to actually be used. Tonight, it held something real. I laid her down, adjusted the coat over her, and stepped back. She didn't wake, didn't move, just slept. And I stood there for a second longer, watching the strongest woman I'd ever met finally let herself be something else, human. Then I turned, walked toward the door, and pulled it open quietly. The night air hit me like a wave as I stepped outside. Cold, but not sharp. Fresh. Atlanta's skyline blinked in the distance, tall buildings sparkling like nothing had changed. But everything had. I stood there for a moment longer, just breathing in the cool dark, letting the city settle around me. Because sometimes, the people who seem hardest on the outside, they're just the ones trying the hardest not to shatter. And tonight, I saw what it looks like when the cracks finally show. The house was dark except for the light in the entryway. I could see it leaking through the frosted glass before I even unlocked the door. My hand hesitated on the knob for half a second, just long enough to draw a breath. When I stepped inside, I found her there. Valerie, still in heels, still in the same cream coat she'd worn that morning when she climbed into David Merrill's car. She was pacing, arms folded, brows pinched like she'd been arguing with herself for the last hour and lost every round. The moment the door clicked shut behind me, she spun toward me. "There he is," she snapped. "You really did it, didn't you?" I set my keys down on the table like it was any other evening. "Hello to you too." Her voice shot out like a whip. "Don't do that. Don't act calm. You went to Susan. You took photos, Thomas. What the hell is wrong with you?" I walked past her toward the living room. "I told you I would." She followed. "You don't get to just destroy people because you're upset." "No," I said, setting down my laptop case. "You did that. I just turned on the lights." She stood in the middle of the room, fists clenched like she wanted to throw something, or scream, or both. This didn't need to get this far. It got this far the second you walked into a hotel with your boss's husband. Her jaw clenched. That was a mistake. I looked at her. A mistake you've repeated more than once. Silence. She flinched slightly, but recovered fast. You just wanted to punish me. I shook my head. No. I wanted the truth. And now it's out. Valerie took a shaky breath. You could have talked to me. We could have handled this privately. I tried, I said. Every night you came home with another lie tucked between your teeth. I tried. You said you were tired. Said you were working late. Said everything was fine. You chose silence. You chose distance. You chose him. Her face twisted with something between regret and rage. Do you realize what you've done? She hissed. Susan called me sobbing. She's pulling me off every project. HR's already involved. She said I'm emotionally compromised and temporarily suspended. David won't answer my calls. I stared at her, steady. You're not the victim here. She stepped closer. You think you look noble in this? You think you're some truth-seeking hero? All you've done is burn everything to the ground. No, I said softly. You burned it. I just stopped pretending the smoke was fog. She stared at me, breathing hard, lips parted like she wanted to scream something, but couldn't find the words. Her fury, so sharp just minutes ago, was fading into something else. Something heavier. I picked up the envelope from the side table. I'd printed it at a copy shop on my way home. She saw it and froze. What is that? Printed list of your accounts and the box of your stuff I packed this morning. The guest room's already empty. You'll stay there tonight. Her voice dropped. You're kicking me out. I met her eyes. No, I'm giving you space to leave with what's left of your dignity. In the morning, you'll go. For the first time that night, Valerie didn't move, didn't yell, didn't accuse. She just stared. And in that silence, I saw it hit her, the full weight of what she'd lost. Not just her job, not just a secret, but the version of me she thought would always stay. You don't mean this, she whispered. We've been through worse. No, I said gently. You've done worse. I've just finally decided not to carry it anymore. The words landed hard. I could see it in her face. Something cracked behind her eyes. She didn't speak again. I turned and walked upstairs. Behind me, the only sound was the soft rustle of her coat as she finally sat down on the stairs. Not in anger, but in defeat. 3 days had passed since that night. The house was quiet now. Too quiet, really, but it didn't ache the way I thought it would. Valerie left without a scene. No more speeches. No apology. Just a long pause in the doorway, like she was waiting for me to stop her. I didn't. That morning, my phone buzzed while I was standing in the backyard with a coffee mug and no particular plan. Susan Merrill. For a moment, I stared at the name. The last time we spoke, she was barely holding herself together in a glass office under dim lights. Now, her text was short, simple. Would you meet me for coffee? Just to talk. The cafe she picked was off a side street in Inman Park, quiet, old-world style, with mismatched chairs and soft jazz playing low through dusty speakers. I arrived first, picked a window seat. When she walked in, I stood up without thinking. She looked different, not polished the way she used to be. Her blouse was casual, her coat unbuttoned, and her hair pulled back into a soft braid. No makeup, just her. Hi, she said gently. Hey. Susan sat down across from me and gave a faint smile. From her bag, she pulled out a neatly folded coat, mine. You left this, she said, laying it across the table. Thanks, I replied. I didn't realize. I know, she said. You had other things on your mind. A waitress came by. She ordered tea. I stuck with coffee. There was a pause, one of those long, weighted silences that neither person rushes to fill. Then Susan spoke. Valerie's done. Corporate suspended her pending review, but the board isn't interested in a comeback story. Too much risk. Her badge access was deactivated yesterday. I nodded slowly. I'm not surprised. And David, she said, more quietly now. He's moved out. His lawyer's already circling. They had joint investments, most in his name. I froze every one of them. I looked at her for a long second. That's fast. I've had time to prepare, she said, voice soft but clear. I just didn't want to admit I might need to. Susan reached for her tea, wrapped both hands around the mug. I meant what I said that night, she continued. You could have buried her quietly. Could have sent those photos anonymously and watched the chaos from your couch. But you came to me instead. You deserve to hear it first, I said. She looked down at her cup, then back at me. Do you regret it? No. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. Me neither. We didn't talk about details after that. We didn't need to. The cafe was quiet, the light shifting gently through the window as the morning rolled on. Then, without saying a word, Susan reached across the table. Not dramatic, not flirtatious, just her hand on my knee. Her fingers rested there like they were testing the space between friendship and something more. I looked at her, but she didn't pull away. It's strange, she said softly. I've spent my whole career building walls. And now, somehow, the only person I trust is the man who tore it all down. I didn't tear it down, I said. I just refused to look away. That time, she did smile. We didn't talk about what came next. Not out loud. But her hand stayed on my knee until we both finished our drinks. And neither of us mentioned Valerie again. I don't know how she found us. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe she followed Susan. Maybe she just knew me well enough to guess where I'd go when the smoke cleared. Either way, she came in like a storm. 1 second, Susan and I were sitting there. Soft music, quiet glances, the slow stretch of healing. Then the bell above the cafe door rang, and everything shattered. Valerie. Her coat was still wrinkled from the back seat of whatever car she'd come in. Her eyes, wild, red, glassy. She wasn't crying. She was past that. She was fury in heels. Susan saw her first and straightened in her seat. I stood instinctively, but it was too late. Valerie didn't say a word at first. She crossed the floor like it belonged to her, one hand gripping a glass of wine that definitely didn't come from this cafe. Then, without warning, she threw it. It hit Susan across the face, deep red, sudden, and violent, splashing down her blouse and neck like a scene from some twisted drama. Gasps erupted around us. Chairs scraped. Someone shouted. I stepped between them fast, grabbing Valerie by the arm. What the hell are you doing? I barked. You, she screamed, eyes locked on me. You ruined me. She tried to push forward, but I didn't budge. Susan sat frozen, blinking red wine out of her lashes. Valerie was shaking now, trembling with rage. I gave you everything, she shouted. And you turned me into some villain. People stared. A server picked up the phone behind the counter. I kept my voice level. You did that to yourself. Security arrived 2 minutes too late, but enough to matter. They took her gently but firmly by both arms. She didn't fight, just looked at me with something almost childlike behind the fury. Not love, not hate, just disbelief that I didn't stop it. They're not with you anymore, I said quietly. Not the job, not the excuses, not me. They pulled her toward the door. She didn't scream again. She just went. And the second it shut behind her, silence fell again. Susan let out a shaky laugh, half breath, half surprise. I took a napkin from the table, dipped it in my water glass, and leaned over. Hold still, I said, gently wiping red from her cheek. She nodded, not speaking, eyes glossy but dry. When I finished, I offered my arm. She took it, and we left through the back door, without looking back once. The skyline outside Susan's office, now my office, looked the same, but it felt different when you were sitting behind the glass. It had been months since the last storm passed, since she stepped away from the company for maternity leave, one hand gently resting over the life we'd created together. Her absence echoed in the hallways, but not in sorrow. In peace. I never chased power. I never asked for a corner office or titles that made people speak softer around me. I just wanted the truth. And somewhere along the way, the truth led me here. Susan and I didn't fall into anything quickly. We rebuilt. Slow, intentional. We had shared grief, shared silence, and eventually, shared hope. Now, with her gone for a while, I carried the weight of the company carefully. I wasn't trying to become her. I was becoming someone else entirely. Someone she believed in. One afternoon, she visited, belly showing more than last time, her steps a little slower, but her smile just as steady. She stood near the window and looked out at the city. It's strange, she said. All those people down there. You'd never guess what any of them are carrying. I walked up beside her, slid my hand into hers, and said, no, you really wouldn't. And maybe that was the point. Because if there's one thing this whole mess taught me, it's this. People aren't always what they seem. The ones you trust the most might be living two lives. The ones you fear might be falling apart behind closed doors. And the quiet ones, the ones no one notices, might be the ones who stand when everything else breaks. Life is messy. People are complicated. And sometimes, it's only when the masks fall that we see who they truly are. Or who we are. And that was the end of my story. I still think about the moment Susan froze when she saw the photos. The way she chose to face the truth instead of covering it up, even when it shattered her world. If you were in her position, would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. And if this story hit something real for you, don't forget to like and subscribe. I've got more truths to tell.